What's the biggest thing holding you back from deeper, safer connection in relationships? It's not your communication. It's what happens in your body before you react. Most relationship issues aren't about saying the wrong thing or the right thing. It usually stems from having dysregulation hijack the moment so that clarity is not available. I'm going to share with you practical steps for nervous system regulation. My name is Mandi Gardner, and I help women who want to move from feeling dysregulated and disconnected in emotionally charged situations to embodying calm, connection, and clarity so that it can enable them to communicate effectively and trust themselves in relationships, fulfilling their deeper need for self-leadership and personal authority. I'd like to share a personal story with you. A few years ago, I moved in with my now husband, Dave, and it was only a few months after I had moved in. Unfortunately, because of previous relationships, I had some pretty severe trust issues. There was an evening where he was supposed to be home from work, and he was about 10 minutes later than he, had told me he was going to be home. And so I called him on the phone only to have him not answer. I immediately went into a dysregulated state. I just got super triggered. And in that moment, I went into what's called a mental dysregulation, where my mind started reeling and also going through the worst case scenario. He's cheating on me. He's at some woman's house right now. In my previous relationship, I have experienced being cheated on. So now, in this moment, I was completely dysregulated, just thinking the worst. In the middle of writing an intense text message, "Where are you? You told me you're going to be home. And in the middle of writing this message, he calls me back and he's like, "Hey, babe, I'm so sorry I didn't answer. I was in the middle of a conversation with my brother. I stopped by his house on the way home from work and I'm on my way. I'll be home soon." I felt so relieved and then also a little embarrassed because I had overreacted in my mind. I was in the middle of that text message, and let's say he hadn't called me back at that moment and I had actually sent that message, right? Like, this is a newer relationship. We had just been dating for a couple of years before moving in together. And so had I tagged him via text message, that wouldn't necessarily have turned out to be a good experience for the relationship. It could have caused damage because I'm instantly going into this, "I don't trust you. What are you doing? You should be home" sort of mentality. So in that moment, I had this opportunity. It could have gone really bad had I sent the text message or reacted in a very attacking or defensive way. Luckily, I had a positive result where I paused before sending the text message, and it allowed some time for him to contact me and get a hold of me and let me know, "Hey, I'm here. Is what I've been doing. I'm so sorry for not getting a hold of you sooner, and I'll be right home." It was able to have a positive result, but I was so triggered and dysregulated. When he came home, I had to tell him everything that I had just gone through. Like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I called you, you didn't answer. My mind went crazy and I just assumed the worst." Luckily, he was able to hold space for me as I explained to him what I was going through. This is a good example of how when we get dysregulated, it can really be the catalyst for breakdown in a relationship. It could have been me judging, accusing, blaming, and expecting. That could have made him feel very defensive, and then we could have ended up in quite an argument. So I want to break down what was actually happening in my body. I went into a fight or flight response and my nervous system just activated and lit up. And then I went into old thinking behaviors, old fears popped up. Like, "Oh, he's a cheater just like all my other exes. I also had a stepdad that cheated." And so it was a pattern of behavior I was used to having from men, right? Fear of that being reality comes out. in these accusatory or fear-based behaviors. In that moment, it really had nothing to do with Dave. It was all me and how my nervous system responded. Luckily, I've learned how to regulate my nervous system in a more powerful way so that I can pause and have more positive outcomes in these difficult situations, right? So, first, before I go through the 3 practical steps to regulating your nervous system, I want to talk about dysregulation. So there's 5 types of dysregulation, and the one that I've mentioned before is mental dysregulation. That's the one that I can suffer from quite often. In my head, I am reeling, going into this cyclical pattern where it's this fear-based thing, and I'm just kind of looping, right? And I could go into imagining the worst. I could go into black and white thinking, catastrophizing thinking, right? These are the cognitive distortions that can happen. For me, I can be mentally dysregulated, but on the outside, I appear to be very calm, cool, and collected. But on the inside, I'm freaking out. There's emotional dysregulation, which is where you're crying, you're sobbing, and you can't really calm yourself down. There is cognitive dysregulation, which is the mental, which is the one I was describing earlier. There's behavioral dysregulation, where maybe you get in a car and you speed really fast and it's a little bit dangerous, or doing reckless things like that. Also, interpersonal relationships, you could really lash out or say things you don't mean in the heat of the moment, right? This is what we're talking about. Then just dysregulation. So, like being so triggered that you cannot really control your responses. The first step is really recognizing, like, oh my gosh, I'm dysregulated right now. Like, I am super triggered, I'm super upset. And the really important piece of understanding that is because when you know that you are dysregulated, and I needed to learn this, this is part of my healing path, this is why I share this with you. But when you are dysregulated, you literally cannot access the rational thinking part of your brain. Like, it's turned off. You can't access it. Therefore, trying to have any sort of effective communication in relationship in those moments are pretty much the worst idea ever. And have you experienced that where you've been in a heated emotional conversation and it just goes around in circles and there's no real conclusion and everyone just is feeling very upset, right? So in those moments when you realize you're dysregulated, the first thing that you do is you pause. Practical step number 1 is pause before you speak, or pause before you press the send button on that text message or that voicemail, right? Just pause. So interrupt your reaction by just taking a step back, right? Allowing yourself to not react, not respond immediately, okay? And then practical step number 2 is to regulate through your body first. I do have a video that goes into more detail about the 5 types of dysregulation, and I will link that at the end of this video if you are interested in watching it. So being able to regulate through your body first, the resource that you have available to you is your breath. I'm an Ashtanga yoga teacher, and yoga has been a crucial part of my healing process. And so not only did I want to practice yoga all the time, I also wanted to teach it. I strive to learn traditional yoga practices that are safe and trauma informed. Because of my education, my training, my experience, and also not experience just learning from my teacher and from advanced teachers, but also from my personal experience of different breathwork exercises. I've done a lot of different things, and I'm a very big advocate for nose breathing, right? So in the Ashtanga yoga world, there's what's called pranayama, which is one of the 8 limbs of yoga. It's breathing techniques, and most of them involve nasal nose breathing. So settle in your seat and root your sits bones down, spine nice and tall. Take a moment to breathe in through the nose, a really long, expansive, full breath. Exhale out the nose, nice and slow and smooth. Now, continuing to lengthen each inhale and exhale through the nose. This is what helps to bring your nervous system back online and make it more grounded and calm before you engage in communication. If you are getting dysregulated or triggered, that is the perfect time to take a break, take a self-care moment. If you need, go take a shower, take 24 hours if you have to, right? Get yourself calmed down and regulated enough that you can then approach having that conversation more effectively, because then you're going to create more communication and understanding with one another. I also have a breathing video. It's my cute little son playing piano. I'm still learning how to do this, but you can try it. I'll link that at the end of the video too. Now, practical step number 3. After you have regulated yourself, that's when you get to choose your behavior. So one thing I really share a lot about outside of yoga is what's called DBT skills, or dialectical behavior therapy skills. Now, there's 4 components: mindfulness, emotion regulation, interpersonal relationship skills, and distress tolerance skills. When we are learning to regulate our emotions, we pause, come to our breath, really slow it down, and breathe through the nose. That helps to engage the parasympathetic nervous system, right? Which quite literally will calm our heart rate down, right? So these are practical applications to help us in moments of intensity. The first thing that DBT asks of us, if we are really approaching our healing and, really approaching moving forward in the healthiest way possible, first we need to get very clear with our priorities and our values. And then that way we have this really solid foundation to move from when we are approaching difficult conversations. So, for example, in the story of me and Dave, right, the bigger picture is that I really love this man and I really absolutely do trust him. And then in the micro picture, it was he didn't answer the phone. I got super dysregulated and I went into old thinking patterns of thinking, oh my gosh, he's cheating on me. So the first thing is to pause, right? Take a deep breath, and then to choose my behavior once I'm regulated. I was able to pause, not send that text message, and tell myself, you know what, Dave, he cares about me. He's trustworthy. He's not going to do that, Mandi. He's not going to do that. You just moved in. He wants this relationship to work. Like, I'm sitting there kind of overriding those old trauma-based thoughts, right? Then, sure enough, he calls me back and there he is. He's not cheating on me like my crazy trauma brain wanted to think. In fact, he was having a conversation with his brother. It was very innocent. But because I was able to pause and breathe, I was then able to choose the way that I moved forward. So, for example, had I not paused, had I not stopped to breathe and regulate, I very likely could have continued that text message or sent it right away, or maybe not even answered his call, thinking he's being a jerk or he's playing games, right? And I could have made it worse. That could have caused damage to the relationship. You can see how we respond in emotionally triggering situations is crucial to the success of our relationships. It's not about communication, it's about regulation, understanding the nervous system and how we can really bring ourselves back to a calm, regulated place so that we can have more clarity in our communication. So this will result into deeper connection and more intimacy, fewer ruptures, fewer outbursts or fights, and more self-trust and trust in your partner in these relationships. Okay, so as a quick review, what is the biggest thing holding you back from deeper, safer connection in relationships? It's getting dysregulated. What are the 5 types of dysregulation? There's emotional, cognitive or mental, behavioral, interpersonal relationships, and then the self, right? Being self dysregulated, just meaning that you are not in a state of normal thinking. Your trauma brain takes over and you are no longer in that rational thinking mind. When you recognize, oh, I'm dysregulated, that's when you pause, you stop the text message, or you stop talking or yelling or crying. You take a step back, you breathe, you really listen to your body and ask yourself, what is happening right now? What is happening inside my body? And breathe into it. And then as you find yourself getting regulated, you might need to distract yourself, getting out of that environment that was maybe dysregulating, excusing yourself to your bedroom or to your office or to the bathroom. Some way of distracting yourself temporarily to help regulate yourself. And then when you're regulated, that's when you can approach having either that difficult conversation or approaching how you're going to behave in a certain situation. When you can do that, you will absolutely change the outcomes of your relationships and the interactions within them in those very emotionally challenging times. So, what would your next move be if calm, connected communication was already your baseline? I would love to hear. Tell me in the comments. And then those other two videos I mentioned, they will be linked at the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you made it this far, I would love it if you gave it a like and a subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.